Got to say report. When you're done.
Into challenges to be overcome. Tom's motto is this: no hands, no arms, no problem. Tom uses his legs and feet to do everything from writing, to driving a car, to pitching a baseball. Last year, he was invited to throw the ceremonial first pitch at a San Diego Padres game at Petco Park. From the White House to Hollywood, Tom has worked for more than 20 years in both the public and private sectors. He has produced educational television programs for the United States Department of Agriculture, and he helped produce programs that have been broadcast nationally on the PBS and CBS broadcasting networks. Today, Tom works as a motivational speaker. He meets with students of all ages, from preschool to professionals, to teach his message that it is okay to be different. Tom is truly inspiring, and he's here today to share his message with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 2009 commencement speaker, Mr. Tom Willis.
Director Gervais, distinguished faculty and staff, graduates, family and friends, thank you for giving me the honor to deliver your commencement address today, Webster University, class of 2009. Congratulations, guys, you did it. And when I put on this graduation gown this morning, it made me recall my cameo appearance in the movie March of the Penguins. That was, excuse me, it's March of the Gorlocks. You all know what a Gorlock is. It's your school mascot. So, go Gorlocks. Anyway, when I put on this graduation gown, I can feel the tradition and history of Webster University envelop me. In this wonderful polyester blend, I feel the spirit of the graduates who wore this same gown before me. I can feel the sweat on their brow as they toiled through countless hours, hard work and academic endeavor to finally reach graduation day. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I had this gown dry cleaned yesterday. Actually, this is the fourth time I've worn a gown. The three of them were for graduations. And honestly, I remember very little, if anything, that was said by any of my commencement speakers. When I graduated high school way back in 1977, our commencement speaker was Alice Haley, the author of Bruce. And the miniseries had just been on television that year, so he was a very hot property at the time, whose son happened to be in our graduation class. And he was talking about talking with your grandparents, heritage, yada, yada, yada. And at 18 years old, all I could think of was, wrap it up, dude. It's time to celebrate. Time to hit a bar and party. Well, a couple of years later, when I was a little bit older and more mature, and I was at the University of Maryland, and our graduation speaker was the Honorable Ray Marshall, U.S. Secretary of Labor. And I know that for a fact, because this week I pulled out my program out of the closet and looked it up because I had no idea who our speaker was. But I'm sure as I sat there, I thought to myself, come on, dude, wrap it up. Time to celebrate, time to party. So today, while I'm wearing this gown, I look at your smiling faces, and I know full well what you are thinking. Tom, for God's sake, wrap it up. Time to celebrate. But from the looks of you guys, I think you're probably headed to Chuck E. Cheese. As you can tell, all the comedians were booked today, so as that being said. So students, just when you thought you were finished your degree, it's time to find out you have to sit through one more class. And that class is Tom Willis 101. And I warn you, there will be a quiz. John Wooden was the basketball coach at UCLA, and he always told his players, don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I live my life. I don't let what I cannot do get in my way. Let's start with a brief history. We're going to go way back to ancient Greece. And back then, if a child was born with a disability in ancient Greece, it was presumed that the child was a punishment to the family by the gods. So to get rid of this mark on their family, they would take the baby and leave it in the woods outside of the city walls to die. In ancient Rome, it wasn't much better. If a baby was born with a disability, it was determined that child would never be able to contribute to society. It would only be a drain on resources, so those children were murdered. Well, we're going to jump forward to ancient Washington, D.C., back in 1959, the day I was born. And as Mr. Bay said, I was born without arms. I have just this one small little hand. I hope you guys can see it. With two little arms. There's nothing on the opposite side. We don't know what happened. I was not a child of thalidomide, which was a drug of the day that was causing birth defects. My mother never took that drug. But I was born, and when I was born, the doctors and the nurses rushed me out of the room. My mother never got to see her baby. And she was saying, what's wrong? What's wrong? And they were all huddled together trying to figure out what to do. So they finally came in to my mother and my father, and they said that your child was born disabled, born without arms. And there's a facility here in Washington, D.C. where we can take him, and he can live out his short, meager life. And my parents said, absolutely not, bring us our son. So I became the third child of the Willis family that day. I have an older brother and sister, and neither of them has any disability, except they're my brother and sister. So in the early months of my life, I was born with an underdeveloped digestive system, so I was regurgitating almost everything that I ate. So to make sure I got enough nutrition, my parents had to feed me every 2 hours, 24 hours a day. And this went on for nearly 6 months. But I finally got to the point where I started to be able to digest food correctly, and I was on my way from there. Well, during this time, my dad was having pains in his arm and his leg, but he didn't pay too much attention to it because he was busy trying to take care of this young child. And it turned out that he was developing, or he had cancer. And by the time it got to the point where he went to the hospital and they did the test, he had a tumor on his spinal cord and there was nothing they could do. So my dad died when I was 10 months old. So my mother buried her husband, lifted her chin high, and took her 3 children home to raise as a family. And as I grew up, I learned how to do everything with my feet. Write, color, paint, even to throw a baseball or kick a football. Well, I was doing pretty good until about the age of 5 or 6 when I started to develop a term scoliosis, and that's curvature of the spine. So they tried every treatment they could. They tried braces, they tried traction. They finally determined there was nothing else they could do because the more I grew, the more my spine was bending, and I would literally fold in half and die. So they had to go in and do what's called Harrington rod fusion, where they took 2 metal rods, put them in my back, and actually tied them down to my rib cage so that spine could not move. Well, after that, they decided I needed to be in a body cast from my neck to my waist for a year. I was in 1st grade. But I went back to school, and fortunately I was able to do everything with my feet. So I was able to pick up and just keep going from where I left off. After a year, I got out of the body cast and into a body brace, which I then wore until the age of 13. So I was always this little kid walking around with a lot of equipment. I don't think I'd ever make it through an airport security. So I moved on to high school, and fortunately I did very well in academics. I graduated 2nd in the class. Out of a class of 100 students, I received the silver medal for general excellence. But what's more ironic, I received the gold medal for English. I have no idea how that happened. Listen to me. I end with prepositions. I do all the wrong things. Okay, I'm going to interject a life lesson here. Learn to adapt and move forward with what you have. When I turned 16, what do you think I wanted to do? I wanted to drive a car, just like everybody else. But everyone we asked said, there's no way you can drive a car. Any person with missing arms usually puts their foot up on the steering wheel and drives with their foot. Well, I have 2 metal rods in my back. That's not going to happen. So we looked and we looked and we looked, and it took 2 years. But we finally found a gentleman in Texas who put a steering wheel on the floor. So I drive with 1 foot on the steering wheel, my steering wheel on the floor, and I use the other foot for the gas and brake. Well, I've been driving for over 30 years, and I've driven more than 500,000 miles. I'm in my 6th vehicle. And everybody back then said, no, you can't do it. But I learned to adapt with what I had and move forward. Okay, now that I have a car, I was off to the University of Maryland, and I was fortunate during the summers of class at the University of Maryland, I got a job with the U.S. Navy. And the first summer I worked with the Navy there in Maryland, and the second summer I finagled my way into a summer job with the Navy here in San Diego. So when I was 18 years old, 19 years old, I first came to Southern California, set foot here, and said, I love it, I want to live here. But I had 1 semester of college to complete. So I got on the plane and went home. And I went back and went to my graduation and did pretty well. I graduated magna cum laude. I had finished my 4-year program in 3.5 years. But the worst part was I missed summa cum laude by 1/10 of a grade point. So, oops. But our ceremony, literally we had 3,000 graduates. So it was, okay, College of Arts and Humanities, stand up. You graduated, sit down. College, that was it. The longest part was waiting for everyone to file in and file out. So it kind of wasn't exactly the best graduation ceremony, but at least I was out of college. And then came a fun time looking for the first full-time job, which I finally landed a few months later. Then I got my first credit card. Then I got my first apartment. And then, by every good fortune, I met the person that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. So I got married. But my wife had a daughter. So I also became a stepfather. So when I married a family, and I was now one person trying to support 3 people. Well, I was still in my starter job, the one I had gotten just out of college. You know, the one that you go, I'll work there 6 months, I'll be out of there, on to the next thing. Well, my 6 months was 6 years. And I was a manager of field interviewing staffs. And these were people who actually made phone calls from their home, because back then, long distance was just unacceptable. So I literally had people working in states all around the country. It was my job to make sure they got their jobs done right. Well, our boss called everybody in one day and said, you know, these interviewers just aren't doing as well as they used to. Go out there and train them to do a better job. Here's a pile of handouts. Here's an audio tape. Go forth and train. Okay. None of us knew what the heck we were doing. So, of course, I had the great fortune of going to my #1 market, New York City. And my #1 interviewer, my coordinator, lived in the Bronx. So my first training session was in the Bronx. And I got into the room, and all of the people there had worked for this company probably longer than I had been alive. So I sheepishly handed out the handouts. I hit the play button on the tape, and 2 minutes later I had to turn it off because they were laughing. They were laughing at me. So I kind of went, okay, and all they wanted to know was, when are we getting a raise? When are we getting a raise? We don't care about any of this other stuff. So on the plane home, I just sat there with my tail between my legs going, man, I really screwed that one up. I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm sure there is a better way to do this. And I went back to the University of Maryland, and I enrolled in graduate school for education, primarily adult education and educational technology. So I too went to school full-time, or part-time rather, while I was working full-time and trying to provide for a family of 3. So I gave up 2 years of my personal life. I had shelved my personal life to make room for my school. And very fortunately, my wife and daughter supported me when I was either going to class or to the library. And yeah, in those days, you had to go to the library. So anyway, I had one semester left. I went in and sat down with my advisor. I said, Doc, I got it. I said, right now I got a 4.0. If I can finish with another, good semester, I'll get summa. I'll get that summa cum laude that I missed in undergraduate. And my advisor, my mentor, my friend told me, Tom, there are no honors in graduate school. So there went the summa. But I was fortunate that I did graduate my master's program with a 4.0 grade point average. So when it was time for graduation, I thought back, okay, I'm going to be one of those 3,000 parade in, stand up, sit down, walking. I said, I'm not going to bother. So I didn't go to my graduation for my graduate degree. And today I look at you guys and I think, I really screwed up. I probably shouldn't have done that. So, but anyway, I got my diploma in the mail. And I opened it up, I looked at it, said, cool, put it back in the cardboard tube, put it in the drawer next to my undergraduate degree, which also in the tube. And those sat there for 20 years. And just a few years back, I opened them up and I went, you know what, I worked my you-know-what off for these. I should display them proudly. So we took those, and then my wife and I also dug in the closet. I had my father's college diploma in a tube. She had her dad's diploma in a tube from 1939. So we went down to the framing store, and we now have all four of them proudly, very nicely framed and proudly displayed in our house. Folks, when you get that diploma in the mail, I encourage you to do something with it. Don't just put it back in the tube. You worked hard for it. Whenever I look up at mine, it reminds me of what I did to be able to get to where I am today. So, flip the page here. Pardon me while I take a quick sip of water. Okay, so I was still working, and now I had a master's degree. So I started obviously looking for a job, and I got one a year later with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, known as USDA. I'll be using that acronym. And I worked in the Extension Service, which is the educational arm of USDA. And while I was there for 11 years, I produced live satellite television programs that were sometimes viewed around the country, but also sometimes viewed around the world. I produced national award-winning video programs, and I worked not only in the White House and in the Capitol, but I also worked in Ames, Iowa, and on Smith Island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. So it was a very varied experience. Now, of course, when you get your graduate degree, your ultimate goal should never be money, right? Wink, wink. Well, I got this new job, and I had a very great boss who wanted her staff to be a little bit higher than where they were. And in 3 years, I doubled my salary. Never would have happened without the graduate degree. Wink, wink. Also, while I was in Washington, D.C., I worked with Capitol Concerts, which is a concert on the lawn of the Capitol, the lawn of the Capitol, that is broadcast live on PBS. And while I was working on that, I got to work and meet with dignitaries such as Colin Powell and Senator John Glenn. I also got to work with some Hollywood stars and musicians, my favorite being Dolly Parton. Yes, they are. Another life lesson. If there's something you really want, you can always find a way to achieve it. Well, I started USDA in 1989 at the age of 30, and I set out a 10-year plan. I said by the time I turn 40, I will be living in San Diego. So we went on with life. My daughter went on through high school. She graduated. She was out on her own. So I said to my wife, the 10-year plan is closing in fast, and, this is the time. So I looked around, and I ended up getting a job transfer within the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which meant not only did I get to move to San Diego, but the government would pay for my move. So it was one of those opportunities that it couldn't be turned down. It was too perfect. So my wife at the age of 41, and my wife, we call it, we ran away from home, because all our family's on the East Coast, and we moved to the West. And I made it when I was 41 years old. The goal was 40 years old. So I missed it by that much, just like Sue. But you know what? This one paid off, because now I live in San Diego. And I came here for the location, not the job. The job was terrible. I knew it going in, but I knew all I had to do was hang in there a couple of years. which I did, and after 2 years, I decided it was time to part company with the federal government. They had been my employer for the last 13 years. It had been a good ride, but it was time for a change. Throughout my career, I didn't want to be known as the best disabled TV producer. I wanted to be known as the best producer. And I was able to do that within the confines of USDA, but I realized there was nowhere else for me to go than to keep doing what I was doing and take up space until I retired. So at that point in my life, I decided to take the advice of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and blaze a trail." So I left behind my 13-year career with the government. I left behind 21 years of sitting behind a desk. I left behind putting up with the whims and the worries of my superiors and my colleagues. I left behind a job where I just didn't want to be anymore. So here I am today. I formed my own company called Tom's Feet Productions. And once you see me and you get to know me, you'll know that makes perfect sense. And I am a motivational speaker, and I talk with students of all ages, from preschool all the way through professionals, about being different and about overcoming obstacles and challenges that you meet in life. So what I'd like to do now is briefly, and I know time is running long, but I would like to briefly tell you some of the things I've learned along the way. Number one, to be successful, you need to set goals and time limits, not only for yourself, but for your career and your life. I had the 10-year plan that worked out for me, and I was able to move to San Diego, but also part of that was my wife had to leave her career behind, and she had to make that change with me. And that relocation was a major life-changing decision, but we had planned for it. It wasn't something that just popped up, and we had to make a quick decision as to what to do. So I took a leap of faith and tried something else, which leads me to, life is short, take chances, and be brave. I was on the White House lawn the day the first President Bush signed the American with Disabilities Act into law. The White House had invited all of the federal employees who were disabled to attend. So I went over with a group from USDA. And as soon as we arrived at the White House lawn, I ditched that group and I was gone. I ended up in an empty seat in the second row behind Senator Ted Kennedy and Bob Dole. And I saw everything on stage up close and personal. The group I was supposed to be with stood in the back because they couldn't find enough seats for everybody. Take chances. I've flown in a helicopter over Hawaii, and I've been in a seaplane over the Alaskan wilderness. I walked across the Golden Gate Bridge and the Chesapeake Bay Bridge in Maryland. I was attacked by killer bees in Puerto Rico. And I helped build new homes for needy families in Mexico. And I've seen the sun rise over the Atlantic, and I've seen it set over the Pacific. And I don't have any arms. So what? As Eleanor Roosevelt once said, the purpose of life is to live, to taste experiences to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experiences. Life is short, take chances, and be brave. Home stretch, guys. From personal experience, I can tell you that nothing stinks more than being stuck in a job that you hate. And remember, every minute that you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness. So go out and find your passion. If you've already found it, continue to follow it. Find out what you're good at, what fuels you from the inside, what you really enjoy doing, and never give up on finding it. Decide what you want to do versus what you have to do. And decide where you will be and who will be with you. And always remember that success is a journey, not the destination. Excuse me. Celebrate and build upon your success, but also learn from your mistakes. Remember, nobody's perfect, and we all make mistakes along the way. Bet you didn't know that Thomas Edison tried about 1,600 different materials before he settled on carbon to use as a filament for an electric light bulb. 1,600 failures before he got it right. When you make a mistake, learn from it. Don't dwell on it. Move forward. I learned that one the hard way. Mistakes are actually lessons of wisdom. You learn from them. But the past can't be changed. The future is still in your control. Besides, if you never make mistakes, dude, you are not trying hard enough. Create balance in your life. Make time for yourself. Take time for your family and friends. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Just ask Jack Nicholson for the movie The Shining. If you don't know any of that word. Jobs and career opportunities come and go, but the people who love you will always be there when you need them. And make sure you are present, that you are there when they need you. And if you do, they will always be on the sidelines cheering you on. You know, I know that for a fact because my number one fan is sitting in the audience today. And next weekend, she and I will celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. So make time for yourself, your family, and your friends. Okay, students, that's about it for Tom 101. It's time for your final quiz, and there's only one question. How did you get here today? Who are the people that stood by your side and guided you through your academic journey? Could I ask the faculty and staff of Webster University to please stand? So graduates, do these people devote their time, talents, and professionalism to you to offer you quality education? Some applause would be appropriate right now. Thank you, folks. If you would sit down. Now, for families of the graduates, would please stand. Graduates, what about these folks? Your husbands and wives, sons and daughters, mothers and fathers. You may choose their questions for your time. Thank you very much, folks. And last but far from least, if there are any members, active or past, of the military in the audience, if you could please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, we couldn't be here today without you. We are all deeply indebted to you and your brothers and sisters in arms for your service and your sacrifices you make to preserve our country, our democracy, and our freedom. Personally, I can never say it enough, but thank you, thank you, thank you for your service. I'm told some of the graduates aren't here today because they're currently deployed around the world. I'd like to offer special congratulations to those graduates and wish them all a speedy and safe return home. So graduates, the answer to your quiz, all of the above. Together with the Webster University, faculty and staff, with your family and friends, we're all here today to say congratulations, you did it. In my introduction, it was said that Webster endeavored to find someone who is an inspiration and who exemplifies the virtues of hard work and determination. And today they selected me to fulfill these requirements. I'm grateful, and I humbly say thank you. But today, graduates, those words define you. You exemplify hard work and determination. You are an inspiration to your family and to your friends who believed in you and supported you along the way. You are an inspiration to your colleagues. You went the extra mile and then some to become better in your profession. Graduates, each and every one of you, you're an important person. You matter. People rely on you and people love you. You make a difference in this world. And it's ironic that graduation is both a finish line and a starting line. You just finished your grueling race through college, and today you celebrate that completion. But tomorrow your next race begins. You may not know where you're going, and you may not know how you'll get there, but as Webster University graduates, as fighting Gorloks, you are well equipped to be successful in your journeys through life. And now to conclude, I know you guys are happy to get him down, I want my degree. To get you in the mood for your celebration at Chuck E. Cheese, or wherever you go, let me close in the words and spirit of Ted Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss, from his story, Oh, the Places You'll Go. Congratulations, today's your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have Webster University brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the one who will decide where to go. Congratulations on your marvelous achievement today. My very best wishes for all of your future endeavors and adventures in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing your inspiring message with us. As a remembrance of this day, we are presenting you with an engraved frame as a token of our appreciation, and we will be providing you with a commemorative photo of today's ceremony. Thank you very much.